And take a look at how and what the Finance Minister had to say to a whole host of Indians who joined in on Google+.
I recall at Davos, a mutual friend, Lionel Barber of the Financial Times, mentioned to me that what was needed to be done by businessmen and the government was to put India back on the global agenda. We were simply not part of the conversation. And arguably the budget is such an opportunity to send these signals. But the critics have said that this was a non-event. Now you could answer that in two ways and say that, well, a non-event, no-nonsense budget was exactly what was required and has a longer-term effect. Or you could say there was, in fact, a big bang concealed inside your budget. We just weren't reading the signals correctly. Which answer would you give? Or is there a third answer altogether?
There's no big bang anywhere in the world. We can't invent a big bang. What we're trying to do is stabilize our economy, like many other countries are stabilizing their economies, and get the growth engine started. And as I said in the budget speech, if we grow at 6% and above next year, 2013-14, we'll be the second fastest growing economy in the world.
All of us businessmen want to invest. That's how you make money. That's how you earn a living. We want to believe. And we're in this classical situation of waiting for some kind of trigger to believe again. Perhaps I could ask that even when you talk, for example, about disinvestment, it was mentioned in pure math terms about what your target was, about 40,000 crores. But maybe could there have been more theatre about how you would go about doing it? Could there have been little more articulation about going out and perhaps evangelizing retail investors who would, and restarting, for example, an equity cult again? A little more about that process might have helped, but you restrained yourselves. And in all areas you gave targets, but moved back from that element of theatre that might have created that trigger for us.
You see, in 2012-13, after I took over, every single disinvestment has been a success. Every single one. I started with about 2,000 or 3,000 crore, and we'll end the year with 24,000 crore. For the next year, I have lined up the list of companies which will be disinvested in. I know exactly which company, what amount. We have even a sequence laid out. So we will raise 40,000 crore. It's work in progress. It's a workman-like division of the Ministry of Finance. There is no occasion to make a theatre out of that, because this is simply disinvesting one after another. The first disinvestments will start in April. In fact, we have 3 coming up in March for this year, and the first disinvestments will start in April. So I hope to collect my 40,000 crore. I didn't think that merited theatre in the budget speech. But if you want to know, or we can always find another occasion where we can get all these companies on stage and have a little theatre there. But I think we will raise 40,000 crore.
I will advocate that, sir. You are a poet. You quoted some poetry, so you have a very strong right brain in you. I would look forward to that little bit of theatre. I think it might put us over the tipping point and we start investing in it.
And if I may add, we've got another 14,000 crore lined up where we will sell the residual stake of government and non-government companies. Suti has 3 companies. There are a couple of other companies. The residual stake of government means very little. We don't have control, we don't have a stake in the management, we don't wish to have control. That stake is there for many years. So some of that will be disinvested too, or sold, the right word, and we will expect to raise 14,000 crore. And if I raise 54,000 crore in one financial year, that's a success by any standard.
Unless you get industry to invest, and Anand alluded to the process issues which people face, and maybe that's why India is ranking as a place to do business is so low, how do we get that ease of operation moving on the ground? And I was surprised we didn't create manufacturing enclaves or special economic zones to give a fillip to exports to solve this long-term crisis that we seem to have. 20 years after reform started, we are back with a 5% current account deficit, a 5% fiscal deficit. Indians are still buying gold, they're not buying equities. We're still, taxing cars on the base of their length or their height. Where did we go wrong as a country? And maybe we were looking for some answers to that. So that's really question one. And question two is really around the capital markets, again, something Anand alluded to. How do we change behavior patterns of investors in this country? We can't clearly be, running on foreign inflows forever. Because, like you yourself said, different countries have different, mood swings. And that impacts capital flows in that particular week. And unless we can create a large domestic investor constituency by changing behavior, and I would suggest what stops us from saying the index companies in the Nifty or the BSE 30, there's no capital gains for domestic investors. Come back to markets, change your behavior, get away from gold. This is the place to make money. A flourish like that from a creative person like Mr. Chidambaram, I would think could have reignited animal spirits. And while the world may be gloomy, we can get market share in a world which is gloomy because their confidence is down. And there are people like Anand who are going out indeed and winning market share across the world in automobiles. And can we find 2, 3, 4 industries that we can back and really operate as India Inc. behind them to go out and in a sense plant our flag in this world? Okay, so it's really reeling from lack of confidence.
You see, where did we go wrong? We have not gone wrong anywhere. The world economy since 2008 has been in deep trouble. And since we are part of the world economy, we're affected. We did pretty well in 2008 to stem the slide. We may have, in fact, overdone it by the second and third stimulus packages, which pushed up inflation, which pushed up the fiscal deficit, but brought us some growth. But that's behind us now. In the last 8 years, in 6 years, we have grown at over 8%. Which other country can make that claim except China? So we have not gone so very wrong that we have to wear sackcloth and ashes. What has happened is, in the current year, growth has slipped to 5%. But that doesn't mean we can't get on to 6% and 7%, one rung at a time. And I'm confident we'll get to 6% next year and 7% the year after. Our potential is 8%. We are aiming at 9%. There are special economic zones. They've been there for nearly 10 years now. There are the new manufacturing zones, which the Commerce and Industry Minister announced a couple of years ago. There are 4 new zones for chemicals and petrochemical industry. Simply announcing them doesn't mean the zones will come in place. The zones are there. We have to ensure that people come and set up factories and begin to manufacture. My job is to ensure that people get in and manufacture, invest in manufacturing, which is why we gave that investment allowance. It's an old idea, but that had been put on the shelf for many years. We took that idea, dusted it, and said, all right, since things have come to such a pass, we will reintroduce the investment allowance. Now, people are sitting on piles of cash. Anand didn't answer that question. The public sector is sitting on piles of cash. The private sector is sitting on piles of cash. I had meetings with the public sector executives in December and January and told them if they don't achieve their capex targets, I will tell them to pay me special dividend. Now, for the next year's capex, we have just sent out the letter. Each PSU is required to fill out that pro forma and tell us what their capex targets are for next year. We're going to monitor it very closely, beginning from April. Every quarter, I will monitor what they're investing. And if they don't invest, we're going to ask them, why are you not investing? We're going to hold the CMD to account. So we are going to closely follow the manufacturing sector, both in the private sector and the public sector. I'm going to meet with individual business houses to ask them what their capex plans are. So I think we are doing everything possible to restart manufacturing, to restart the growth engine. Now the second suggestion that he made, well, that's a very, if I may say, narrow partisan interest. Why should capital gains not be taxed? It's another form of income. If salaries can be taxed, if professions can be taxed, earnings from professions can be taxed. In fact, even some kinds of agricultural income are indirectly taxed by clubbing it with your non-agricultural income. Why shouldn't capital gains be taxed? What is so sacred about those who make money in the capital market that their income should not be taxed? Therefore, I don't think there is a case to say capital gains should not be taxed at all. And not taxing capital gains is the way to revive the animal spirits. I'm afraid that's a very incorrect approach.
Well, excerpts of the conversation that P Chidambaram